Hey, this is Adrian Porter, and this is episode number 35 of Gen X Amplified. And this is an awesome conversation with Marshawn Evans Daniels, reinvention strategist and author of the book titled Believe Bigger, where it's all about discovering the path to your life purpose. So, are you ready? Let's do it.
And so to believe bigger means to believe beyond what you've been through and to believe beyond who you think you are, with your degrees, your successes, your experiences, and even your accolades.
Welcome to Gen X Amplified, where we bring you inspirational and entertaining conversations with successful Gen X leaders and entrepreneurs.
This is the show created just for you. The powerful generation between the boomers and millennials to help you amplify your story,
Maximize your impact,
and become Gen Exceptional in business and in life.
Now, here's your host, Adrian Porter.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Amplified. This is the podcast and the mission and the platform where we showcase the powerful generation of leaders and game changers between those magnificent millennials and those brilliant boomers. Thank you again for listening. And have I got an episode for you today? I'm going to get right in it. So my guest today is a reinvention strategist and life coach who mentors women around the world to live bolder in life and business. She is also a serial entrepreneur, the creator of the Godfidence movement, not confidence, Godfidence, and the founder of She Profits, where she helps women turn ideas into income and inspiration into action. She is also a former sports attorney, Miss America finalist, TV personality, and competitor on some television show you may have heard of called The Apprentice. She left a high-powered law firm and turned her passion for people into a multi-million-dollar enterprise. She is also a graduate of Georgetown University Law Center and is passionate about purpose, manifestation, entrepreneurship, and traveling the globe with her wonderful husband, Jack. So everyone, please welcome my Gen Exceptional guest, Marshawn Evans Daniels. Hey, Marshawn, what's going on?
Hi, good morning. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being on. Definitely, I was looking at your bio and I said, this girl has a lot of great, awesome storylines to talk about. But you have a very, very power-packed bio, and I'm very honored to have you on. Definitely a fan of your work. Love the book, which we're going to unpack. And also, I must ask you, it really must be being blessed with the initials ME, and then eventually launching a business and brand that focus on self-empowerment and personal growth, right?
Yeah, sometimes you don't know what you're being positioned for early on before you actually step into your season of assignment. There's different assignments I think we have in our life, but it was recently Mother's Day, and I posted a picture of me and my mom, and I said, now she's the original Emmy. She's the original me, Mary Evans. And so I was blessed to get her initials, but also her creativity and my dad's creativity to learn how to take what seemed normal and turn it into an enterprise.
I love it. And also being a brand guy like myself, that I really, I thought that was very clever and it makes perfect sense. So kudos to Miss Mary Evans and your father for keeping the initial power moving on with you. So Marshawn, I definitely want to get into the premise of the book, but I like to start first, just briefly for my audience, with your personal and professional journey and how it led you to your current career as a reinvention strategy, a business owner of, I believe the company is called Me Unlimited, and also the other company, Godfidence. And also just your journey just along the lines of how did it really catapult you to become a speaker and just this all around Gen Exceptional leader. Is that okay?
Sure. Well, first of all, I don't think I have ever had a career. I think that I have had curiosity, and it's taken me in a lot of different directions. I think I'm the anti-career in that there's nothing predictable about my path. So I grew up in the suburbs of Texas, North Dallas, And during that time for me in the early 80s, it felt a lot like integration for the first time because most of my teachers had never had Black children in their class before. Mm-hmm. And that really defined a lot of my experience. I share in Believe Bigger, my new book, about what it was like in part growing up as a Black girl in a predominantly white school, mm-hmm. and how that was pivotal in my mindset and not having a place where I felt like I fit in, not feeling like I belonged, being told I didn't belong, being labeled a problem child, being told that I needed special education, and that I was antisocial, and that my parents needed to find a better school more suited for kids like me and my brother. I went on later to go to Georgetown University for law school. I graduated Texas Christian University, magna cum laude. I got over $200,000 in academic scholarships with honors and distinction. I didn't need special education. I wasn't antisocial. I had curiosity. I was a voice at a young age, meaning I talked a lot, and that's what I got in trouble for. And I was brown in an environment where labeling was normalized and just not understood. So what does that do for a little girl? You know, we talk about being Black, being white, being Asian, being Hispanic, but what does identity at an early age do to us? And sometimes it can drive us in different directions. So for me, I'm grateful for my fifth grade teacher, Mr. Eager, who kind of intervened. He had transferred into our school. He was a Caucasian man as well. But he didn't know the labeling. He didn't know problem child me. And I got a fresh start. He was the first adult who told me, and it wasn't on a good day. I write about this in Believe Bigger too, how he stopped me one day because I was talking back in class. Actually, he pulled me out into the hallway, and I think I'm about to get in trouble. And I think he thought I don't think he knew what he was about to say. His face was turning red. And he said, you know what, you can be anything you think you can if you first believe you can.
Right.
Why do you act like this? And that was the first time that an adult had ever believed in me and told me that I mattered, that I wasn't a problem, that I was bigger than the labels and the expectations. And I wanted to kind of start with that moment because I believe that was the moment that I learned how to operate in my life mission. And I was 10 years old in the fifth grade, that somebody would look and see beyond my current circumstances, that would show me and tell me to believe bigger and would speak life into me. And so that transitioned kind of the trajectory of my life in terms of me starting to be more focused on school. I started getting good grades. I became this overachiever, and I ended up going to law school. I was in the Miss America competition. I thought I was going to be the Attorney General of the United States. My platform while I was competing in the Miss America program was youth crime prevention and leadership development. I had gotten this fellowship right in between. It was actually right before I did Miss America. I got this fellowship with the U.S. Justice Department. I had been working with the Attorney General of the United States. I was an active speaker. I started when I was 16.
Wow.
So I had a lot of unusual experiences. I was 19 when I was appointed by George W. Bush to the Juvenile Justice Advisory Board. And I had in my mind that I was going to be this, Attorney General of the United States or a juvenile court judge. And a lot of my advocacy work, my speaking, I had started a youth program. A lot of that was geared towards that goal. And when I went to law school, something else opened up to me in terms of more of the business world and wanting to go into the corporate side of law. And so I did that for about a year and a half. And again, I had been on this show, The Apprentice, as well. I had a book out called Skirts in the Boardroom. And so, my life has taken a lot of different paths from being in the government space and in the nonprofit space, being in entertainment, managing. I started my own sports agency, managing pro athletes in the NFL and the NBA. And then also I had a stint at, with that check where you get your W-2 at the end of the year. I call it the W-2 life versus the W-9 life, where I had a job, one of the most prestigious law firms in the country. And I had what a lot of people have today, particularly in the awakening season that this world is in. I had the tug, and I was like, well, I put all this work in. I've been on this path. Law school, Georgetown's not cheap, $150,000 tuition. And I find myself at this law firm feeling discontent, and I'm wondering if there's more. And so I make the leap in entrepreneurship, and even moving from my sports business, I ended up feeling that tug again. And that's where I open up Believe Bigger, is how I started this sports agency. I grow it to be the fastest growing women-owned sports agency in less than a year. I'm on television with CNN, Fox Business Channel, and ESPN on a regular basis. Wow. I've got this book out. I'm traveling. Life is great. I'm sitting on the 50-yard lines at football games in NFL and center court at NBA games.
Love it.
Managing athletes. And I felt this tug again, and I felt like it was time to shift and didn't know why. And so I'll pause there, which is why I said, so where do you want to start with the journey? There's definitely been a lot, but that was kind of a pinnacle place in my life. But it was also a season where I ended up hitting rock bottom and reinventing. That's where the reinvention strategist came from. That's where this book, Believe Bigger, comes from, is in that season where it seemed like everything was going great.
Wow, you're right. You mentioned earlier the anti-career. It is definitely the anti-career. And I'm glad you actually took us on that trip, because what it does, it highlights to me, and I'm sure to my audience, that not only, you're very rooted in multiple talents and gifts, and you were really kind of finding your way, not in a negative way, but you were basically utilizing what God has given you. And you had great mentors. You mentioned your teacher in the 5th grade, I believe. What was his name, I believe?
Mr. Eager. Yeah, what's interesting is teachers were kind of like my kryptonite, but then there was a few pivotal ones. In elementary school was Mr. Eager, and then I had in high school, I transferred high schools to go to a law magnet program. Mm-hmm. You don't have many of those where you can learn about being a lawyer at such a young age in high school. And my teacher there kind of plucked me, I think, out of obscurity and asked me to go to this trip to Washington, D.C. I told my dad about it. He was like, how much is it going to cost? And they're like, oh, we pay for everything. And that's what got me into government, working with the U.S. Justice Department. And she had no idea it was going to explode in that way. And then I had a person in college, my professor, Dr. Jackson, and again, plucked me out of obscurity. I'm sitting in class one day, and he invites me to apply for this scholarship called the Harry S. Truman Scholarship, which is a $30,000 scholarship for law school. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I'd be applying to Georgetown 2 years later. I didn't even think about it until he told me to consider it. And I think what happens when we live curiously and by faith, and people will come into our lives that are not on the predictable path. Right. They'll be plucking you out. They'll see something in you. But I think what's important about that is because people think that, maybe there's something, special about me that they don't have. And I think that's a really broken mindset, that we all have abilities to attract great people into our lives. But the question is, do we show up in such a way that we're pick worthy? Right. Like, are we showing up as our best self? So yeah, Mr. Eager pulled me aside, told me to believe bigger. Mrs. Greenwood told me, hey, I see something in you, and I want to help develop your leadership potential. And then Professor Jackson said, hey, I want to help you believe bigger about where you belong intellectually, because I struggled believing that I was smart, even in college, because of the labeling still from elementary school. Right. So that stuff can still follow us.
Wow. Mr. Eager, Mrs. Greenwood, and Professor Jackson, if you're out there listening, you have really cultivated a very wonderful branch and tree and blossoming rose just in the career of Marshawn. I swear, these names, Mr. Eager, like, you can't get better than it with a name like that to really catapult you to success.
Oh, I never thought about that. Like, Eager.
Yes.
Yeah, spelled differently. That's true. I'll have to tell him that. Someone just he sent me his phone number a couple of days ago. He came to my wedding, actually. So I was able to thank him in front of 3,000 of his peers years ago at a teacher's convocation, going back to my school district, and talking about how dangerous it is to label children. Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm talking to the superintendent, the entire school district, explaining what was wrong with and broken with the district, and then being able to celebrate a teacher who was differently. All of the individuals that I've named, I've been able to thank them in person and in front of their peers. I think it's important that we go back. Yes. Most people don't. It's important that we go back. A lot of people have been operating in their purpose. They've developed you. And, they didn't use the word purpose back in the day. It was just doing a good job, showing up. And the most underpaid have been our teachers and those in ministry and people who are just in our neighborhood. And very rarely do we actually go back to honor them.
No, we do not. We do not, but we should. We definitely should. You just mentioned, so speaking of operating in your purpose, let's just really jump right into this wonderful book. One of the many reasons why I definitely wanted to chat with you on the show and to really provide value to our audience. The name of the book is called Believe Bigger. Discover the path to your life purpose. And I believe, and I understand it to be an inspirational guide for women who are ready to reinvent their lives and discover a higher purpose when life doesn't go as planned. And I heard something in your journey, Marshawn. You mentioned, sitting on the 50-yard lines, really just managing these athletes and living this wonderful life. But you mentioned there was a moment in your life that really was that transitional period in your journey that almost was the impetus for writing this book or creating your movement and your mission and the businesses and Me Unlimited and Godfidence. Can you just share and unpack this book, just starting with why did you decide to write this book at this time?
Yeah. Deciding to write this book was really an act of surrender because I was in a season of, I would consider super success. I had built this multi-7-figure company helping people. It was faith anchored, and we were doing these massive events, really leading at the front of the pack when it comes to coaching, creating, I believe, a space now where believers feel comfortable blending their faith and business together, because that didn't happen. So starting out as this not knowing I was becoming a trailblazer, that wasn't even the goal. It was just, it bothered me that people didn't. It bothered me that one day I did a teleseminar and I blended faith. I didn't blend. I'm using inaccurate words. I held a Bible study for 7 days, and I had no idea if anyone was going to show up, and all of these people did. And one of my friends said, "My wife was on your online thingy, you know what to call it." And he goes, "I didn't know you had a faith component." And I was like, "What do you mean a faith component? Life is faith, like everything. Like, I don't see how you could look at my life and not know it's been dipped in eternity. Like, this just been all God touched." And I remember being I was a competitive baton twirler growing up, and I'd be on the competition floor, 3 batons in the air. I'm in a stadium full of thousands of people, and we're competing internationally. And I'm saying 4-1-3, which is Philippians 4:13, while I'm on the competition floor. Like, that's how my brother and I were raised. He played football. He had his wristbands taped, and it had 4-1-3 on it. And so God and Christ have always been the center of everything. So, but when he said that, it bothered me. I was like, "What do you mean you didn't know I had a faith component?" And I said, "God, that'll never be a question in any human being's life for as long as I live." And that began the shift for me into, I wasn't trying to blend faith and business. I was just teaching the Bible, and I was teaching business, branding, marketing, and sales, 2 things that it was in my heart, and it flowed for me like water flows. It's just so easy. And so people started to come to my business training programs and say, "Well, I trust you because you're a woman of faith." And it took a while for me to embrace and understand what they were really saying. I heard it, but I didn't understand it. There's a difference between knowledge and understanding, and even understanding to where it changes who you are. That's real understanding. To understand means to stand under. So I didn't understand what I was supposed to be standing under in terms of my positioning and who I really was, because I've never been of the mindset that you have to try to be a believer. Like, you have to force that. You just are it. But when people notice it, I was getting this understanding, God saying, "I need you to step more into it." And I'm like, well, what does that look like? Because there was nobody who was doing that. So I had built this, I started out with an event I share this journey also in Believe Bigger, and how it started with 35 people and grew to 500 attending, super high premium. Our tuition at our events is anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000 per person. So these aren't, just filling up the events with low tickets. Right. So it was high premium. And so I wrote Believe Bigger. Again, I told you when I was in my sports agency, I was at this pinnacle in my life, and it was like feeling God say, okay, it's time to shift. I'm like, but why? Things are going great. I have this sports agency, it's doing well. And he's like, it's time to pause. And again, I'm feeling it again, like I've grown this company. And I didn't feel actually like it was time to pause, but I was told. I felt this inner nudging saying it was time to pause, and I didn't want to. So I walked away, or at least went on sabbatical, walking away from an event that was doing 7 figures in 3 days.
Okay. Wow.
So that context, I want people to understand, because I want them to know how passionate I am about writing purpose, that I stopped that $10,000 to $50,000 programs to write a $24 book.
Wow.
Right?
Yes.
And because I believe in purpose, I believe in people's mission and their assignment. And I also discovered in working with people to change their lives, not just change my own. Because when I started on this journey, I was happy in sports. But what happened was I got engaged, and I was super in love with my life at the time. I was excited about becoming a bonus mom to his 3 kids. And I found out 6 days before my wedding that he was cheating on me. And I ended up calling off my wedding. Believe Bigger opens up in chapter 1 with this story of finding out about the infidelity, how devastating it was, but also like how I didn't understand how I could end up there, how I could have possibly been sleepwalking, because I was too smart for something like this to happen to me, but it did. Mm-hmm. And so I went on this journey of reinventing my life and my mindset. I took 10 months quiet time with God. And it was through that I got this new vision and this new mission to start working with women. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know how I was going to do that, because I didn't want to work with women, because I thought women were evil. I was way more comfortable working with ball players, NFL players. They called me the general. I had 2 brothers, 8 male cousins. Working with men was very natural. Wow. And I was good at it. Right. Like my first client was the highest paid defensive end in the NFL. He just signed a $62 million deal, 7 years. Mm-hmm. Saints. So working with women, I didn't have any desire for it, but I was getting direction for it. And what I learned over the last 8 years in being in this space is not just how I went from stuck to 7 figures, but how to break up with success so you can find significance. Mm-hmm. What is the mindset that it really takes? How is our faith, what we call faith, really often fake? How we know it's fake if it's not producing in the Bible world, we'll call it fruit, but in the business and in the world, we call it results. Mm. If we're not achieving and experiencing results that are a byproduct of what we say we believe, the question is, do we really believe it, or is our belief broken? Mm. And so I challenge someone posted yesterday that this book called them on their crap and that it woke them up. And so to believe bigger means to believe beyond what you've been through. And I say that writing this in a season of depression, well, not writing it, telling a story about coming out of a season of depression, mm-hmm. being financially broke, embarrassed, shamed, and trying to figure out, how do I put my life back together? And then seeing, what does it look like to help people change their life? Today, we're in this season where the marketplace is flooded with coaches and thought leaders and experts, and you can just put up an Instagram page today and you're a coach.
That's true.
Right?
That is true. Oh my God, yes.
And everyone's talking about purpose, but still 99.9% of the people on the planet don't know their purpose. We don't know how to articulate it. We don't know what it is. Some people who think it is, they're really just operating in success and fame and an influence addiction, and it's not purpose. It's not assignment. We don't know what it is because we haven't been taught it. And I recognize that I've been in the trenches with people, not just on stages, not just in corporations, and not just on TV. I've been in those places, but then getting in the trenches of, what does it look like to change your life? What's the battle that's going to happen in your mind between what I call little me and future me? Mm-hmm. And I've been a student of peak performance for over 20 years. The number of books I've devoured since I was a teenager, the seminars, the conferences, the levels, the boardrooms, the places that I've been in. I've been a student of personal business development and business acumen, and blending all that together with also being a student of how is our faith, our belief in God supposed to be manifested in business, in our personal life, in our professional life, as a competitor. How do we show up as a champion? All of this is blended in together to talk about these 5 stages of purpose, and also the mindset of stepping into a place of being a manifester, being a miracle worker, being someone who doesn't just wait for change to come through them, but the change comes through them, because you change your life. Mm-hmm. You might cooperate with God, but you change your life. Just the way you ended up here, you are the one who's going to have to get you out. So waiting for some savior, waiting for some person, I should say, to be the savior or something miraculous to happen when the world is waiting on you to happen to yourself. And so to believe bigger means to believe beyond what you've been through, and to believe beyond who you think you are, with your degrees, your successes, your experiences, and even your accolades. I meet a lot of people today who say, well, I already know my purpose. And I believe that's the beginning of the end. It's arrogance, and arrogance is the assassination to your future. Wow. And so a lot of people who think they know their purpose are operating, and they're going to miss the higher level. This book is for those who want to step into a higher level, higher frequency of their life and their calling and their mission. And most people are going to get left behind. It's only going to be, and the pathway is often narrow for the greatest stuff in life. And so this book is for those people who want to travel that path, and I walk them through the 5 stages of how to get there.
Wow. I will say, Marshawn, there were probably 50 tweetable moments just in that story, because you really dropped a lot of great value bombs. And one of the earlier ones that I heard that stuck out to me was understanding means to stand under. I have never heard understanding used in that context, but I totally get it as you just unpack that further. And lastly, arrogance is the assassination of your future. Wow, that is a pretty bold statement. Yeah,
I was actually reflecting on that this morning. I think particularly for women. Mm-hmm. Now, this book, I believe, is a purpose textbook for men and women alike.
I read it. I'm a man.
And I would love to hear your thoughts on it, because I think that a lot of times women are expected to read books by men, but if a woman writes a book, then a man feels like, well, if she uses she, I can't relate. And it takes a mature mindset for yourself. Wow. And understand that wisdom comes in the vessel that God chooses.
Right.
But I was thinking today, and I've been thinking about this but I was reflecting specifically on it this morning, but it's been a thought for a while, of how arrogance and ego is blocking most women from their next level.
Okay.
Self-reliance. I already know this. So I've gotten some interesting, I think it's funny, I've gotten some interesting second, I guess, double-sided compliments. So sometimes I have a woman who will say, this book was great. I already knew my purpose, though, and I didn't even know if there would be much in here for me. But you know what? I actually found a few things. It was good. You should pick it up. There's so many levels to the way as women that we cannot compliment another woman.
Right.
There's so much to that in terms of, well, I should already know this for myself, or I already do this, or I'm already a coach, or I'm already this, or I'm already that. And I don't want to actually have to tell another woman that she helped me.
Pardon? I was going to say, why do you feel, why is that the case?
Yeah.
When it comes to, I'm just curious.
So there's 7 blessing blockers that I walk through and believe bigger that keep us stuck in the gap. Arrogance, pride is one of them, in terms of feeling like you know it all, and being afraid to get help. The Bible says iron sharpens iron. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. But what we don't learn about is how women are designed to iron sharpen. I call it sister sharpen each other. And there is this idea that is created of competition, that there's only room for one, And just like women will compete over a man or to compete for a job and feel like there's this crab in a barrel, there's one position at the top. Now, when they see a woman who they might perceive at the top, they don't want to actually it's a warped training. Men look at it like, wait, this person's in the number one slot. I want to train with them. Mm-hmm. I want to work with them.
Right.
Women do not think, mature women do, but most women who think they're mature, they're really just, they're drowning in their own ego and they're creating isolation. Mm-hmm. It's this thing of, I want to look like I showed up on my own. I arrived. Now, I'm not just saying this because of this book. I've worked with women for the last 8 years.
Right.
And I've seen those who have stepped in and I've seen those who have not. And I've seen those who have not stepped into a place of being able to be coached and trained, who later came around and said, here's the reason why I didn't. My pride, my ego. And I watched women that were further behind and I was way ahead of step in and advance way past me. But because I was stuck on stupid, meaning I wanted to focus on do it my way, or I didn't want, it's almost like even I don't want people to look and see that I have a coach or that I have help. I just want to look like I'm Superwoman. I ended up here. That mentality keeps so many stuck. And so women, there's a complexity. I have a special heart towards women, but I also have this is a byproduct of the woman who was my baton twirling coach. She was the best in the world and she required the best of us. So there's this part of her that's extremely loving and she will hold you, but she will put her foot in you know what as well too. And I think that there's that balance in me that I'm like, I will tell you the truth about what is holding you hostage because that is truth and that is real love. But I will also pray for you. I will also speak life into you. I will also give revelation if it comes to me and I will pass that through you selflessly. But what I won't do is shrink. I won't shrink to a level of what I believe is dysfunction. And so the way that we elevate is say, hey, you know what? I'm operating up here. I want you to operate up here because I want us all to go up together. Right. And I want to see every woman win. But I don't think that we believe that when a woman says, I don't think other women actually. Sometimes it's tough for us to believe that because we haven't seen it modeled. And when we see it, we don't know what to do with it. So we reject it. And then pride comes in.
You're right. It really is disheartening and unfortunate when people are stuck on stupid. And many of us, I mean, I've done it before in the past because you let arrogance and ego just really be the blocker for your success. And to your point earlier, you know, a lot of people think they know their purpose, but they don't take the necessary steps to truly know their purpose. And the nucleus of this book, Marshawn, is the purpose map. So can you just talk about the purpose map and those 5 stages that you mentioned that is based on 5 stages and what does that mean?
Of course. So the 5 stages of divine reinvention are kind of what I discovered just in being again in the trenches, seeing women who are coming out of the workplace or coming out of the home, wanting to start a business, seeing women who were coming out of the military or literal or divorces, domestic violence, health scares, literally everything. And I've had quite a few men that have enrolled in our programs as well.
Okay.
And so, in seeing that, I noticed this pattern of what would happen in terms of these stages of life. And when I see things, it comes into me like a framework, and I draw a lot like an architect. And I drew out these 5 stages, and I met this woman one day.
I was going to say, are those your illustrations in the book? So
I drew it, and then I got an illustrator to draw what I draw. So it would have, my gifting is not in artistry in that way. I'm architecting. I can architect, but I'm not artistic. I recognize my superpowers. And so I was actually really humbled to be able to partner with a woman named Constance Wilson who took my drawings and drew them better than I could draw them. And so that was really great to be able to partner with someone in their superpower to take that and bring that to life. Again, she too did not know what she was getting into. people always say, I want to work with you. And I was like, okay, well, I'm very specific. And I know what, it's difficult to work with someone who really knows what they want. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I drew out these 5 stages in my business journal. And the first time I drew it for somebody else was actually at a networking event for Delta Airlines. Delta was one of my clients at the time. And there was a woman there from Home Depot who is extremely successful, highly decorated, C-level. I knew who she was without meeting her in person because her reputation preceded her. And I was listening to her story where she was sharing like she was in this place of transition. Mm-hmm. And I said, I think I can help you see what you're feeling, not just understand it, but see it. So I took out a napkin. It said Delta on the one side, a cocktail napkin, and I flipped it over. And on the back, I drew the purpose map for the first time for somebody else. And stage 1 is called discovery. This is where we ask the question, who am I supposed to be?
Got it.
Who am I supposed to be? And this is where we learn the do's and don'ts of life and what I call the rules. This is where we're told who we should be, who we shouldn't be, what we should do, what we shouldn't do, how to not get in trouble, and learning what we do that will create pain or rejection or getting your name on the board with checks, as was my case in school. We'll learn what is unacceptable. This is also where we learn the voice that I call in Believe Bigger, little me, the voice of fear and shrinking and stinking thinking. And this is where we learn to play it safe, to color within the lines. And we learn this from all different sources, from our families, from our communities, from media, from our peers, from our teachers, from culture, but also we learned it in church. Mm-hmm. The do's and don'ts. What is a nice Christian girl supposed to be and do? And all of these rules, we're like sponges and we're processing it. And these rules take us into stage 2, which is called talent. Talent is the second stage where we ask the question, who did I decide to be? And the thing is, you can be anything you decide. It doesn't mean it's who you were born to be. Right. Mm-hmm. And so talent is a very tricky stage because it's not just about success, and everyone labels success differently, but it is about our identity that we adopt. We pick a lane and that lane becomes our life. And I talk and Believe Bigger about 5 success mountains for women that we climb, and how these mountains become our identities, whether it's motherhood or marriage or making a difference or money. These titles that we wear, even our jobs, they become idols. Mm-hmm. And so we end up becoming addicted and not knowing that we're addicted to a version of ourselves that's going to actually block us from our highest self. So that's what happens in stage 2, is that and this is where I was when I was in my sports agency. Everything was going great. This is also where I was at my law firm, wow, where I'm succeeding. I'm doing what I was told. I followed a plan. I followed the path. I followed the rules. I did what I was supposed to do. I got the job. I've got the check. Why am I feeling discontent? Why am I running this sports agency? And then why am I feeling this tug again, this holy tug saying it's time to shift and move? And the reason we don't understand what to do with that feeling is because we're taught retirement, not reinvention. I believe that reinvention is a core aspect that we should understand, that our lives are not our own. Mm-hmm. We make plans as though our lives are our own. We plan for retirement when we're picking a career at 18 years old and you don't even know much about yourself, and you're trying to pick a degree, a path, and figuring out how you're going to retire and provide for your grandkids, and you don't know. So we're taught retirement, not reinvention. And so talent, what'll happen is a split rock moment will come in. It'll disrupt our lives. And this is what happened. This is what happened for me when I left my sports agency, and when I found out I closed down my sports agency, and I found out that my then fiance was cheating. It was a split rock moment. And so I talk about split rock moments and embracing disruption, and how when you do that, it's just based off the scripture, Isaiah 48:21 says that God split the rock. And when he did, water gushed out. And I learned that there's new life on the other side. And so I'm drawing this on this napkin for this woman. I write this box discovery, and then I draw the rules, and I draw this talent stage and draw the mountains, and then I draw this chaos representing disruption that takes us into this place called the gap where we circle. It's like the wilderness. It's the in-between our Egypt and our promised land. You're not quite where you were, but you're not quite where you're going either. This is where most people are right now. We're in this middle place called the gap. And the gap is a special place, but it can also be a dangerous place. It can be a purpose purgatory if we're not careful. Going in circles, kind of like how the children wandered in Israel. Israelites wandered for generations. It was because there was something that needed to go that they weren't willing to release. And that's also why we circle in the gap. The gap is about breaking up with who you've been. So the discovery and talent stages are all in what I call the comfort zone. And the split rock comes in and disruption comes in to break you from your comfort zone to move you to your glory zone. But in the middle, you'll have to go through a growth zone and it will feel like a war zone. And we can circle in the gap for a lot of reasons. I talk about the blessing blockers, but in the gap, you're going to ask the question, what is happening to me? Because things are going to start changing and they're going to start shifting around you. And it's not bad, it's blessed, but it becomes a burden if you don't understand what's happening. You're going to think you're under attack, but you're really in alignment. You're in a place where alignment is trying to move you into your divine assignment. And that alignment is purpose. It's also calling. It's also your destiny. It's your life mission. It's God. It's future me. There's a confluence of different factors that are happening in your life. But we don't, because we're not taught reinvention, we miss it and we don't understand it. And because we're taught, even through religion, the safety of predictability as opposed to peculiar living, which is what a person of faith really looks like, is unpredictable. We don't understand how to shift. And shift is what we really want to do. We want to shift through the gap by making bigger decisions, getting a bigger vision. And I also believe in making bigger investments. And so as we shift, we enter into this glory zone. Stage 4 is called gifts. And gifts is where we ask the question, how was I really designed? How did God really design me? And this is where we start to learn our gifts as opposed to our talents. We learn what I call our superpowers. And our ultimate superpower is our voice. Now, our individual superpowers might be different. Mine are around messaging and strategy, business, and some other gifts, spiritual gifts around miracles and wisdom. But in terms of the business world, I understand really well. I've come to understand, not because I studied it, because I just tried new stuff and I found out what I didn't know I had was around branding and money messaging and strategy and income generation. I learned was a superpower for me, helping people find their purpose. So each of us will have, and I talk through in Believe Bigger, 3 different influence and purpose archetypes. Are you the helper? Are you the pusher? Are you the puller? Are you the planner? And knowing which archetype you are. I also walk through 4 levels of your potential. Because people, we're not trained to know what our gifts are. We've been taught that we have gifts, but no one has taught us what our gifts are. How do we apply them outside of volunteering for a ministry, a committee in a ministry? So how do you use them to build the life that God has intended for you to live? Not just building someone else's dream. There's just so many aspects to this gift thing. So anyway, the final stage, our gifts are designed for this final stage called influence. And influence is what we're really here for, influence and legacy. And the question we ask in this final stage is, where am I now being led to lead? Where am I now being led to lead? Not if, but where. And purpose is not about your why. Purpose is about your where. Your why, we often make up. People say, what's your big why? And they say, my kids. And I'm like, your kids are not your why. Your kids might be your motivation, but they're not the reason. I believe there's something between every human being, every woman, every man, and God, just individually, intimately, that has nothing to do and is not dependent upon the existence of other people. Because what do you do when the job ends, when the children grow up, when the man leaves? Who are you then? Who are you then? And so all of these things that happen in our life, the disruption, the successes, the obstacles, the mind battles, all of those are battles for our voice, for our gifts, for our brilliance, for our light. I call it your incredible factor. And also it's a battle for the belief that you matter enough to have influence. Little me wants you to believe that, and even success will trap us and say, oh, what looks like success isn't significant. So if little me can get you even to be successful, you'll miss the very reason that your life was created and why it's needed. The question of your life, and the question we've got to start teaching our kids and grooming a new generation with a new mindset, with new language, is not asking them what do they want to be when they grow up. We need to ask them, what do you want to create? And where do you want to lead? Right? Because what you create, and when we tap into their gifts and their creative ability, it will open up the realm of their influence. We are here to make manifest the glory of God by manifesting what's never been done, what's never been created, not just to be what's already been done, but to do what the world has never seen. And when we start thinking about when we start understanding our how we're wired in terms of our gifts is the clue to our where, we'll then understand our why. Our why is actually the last question. We understand why when we understand our where. We understand where when we understand our how. And so this purpose map is, I believe, changing the world one person at a time. My intention is that the way we have the 5 love languages, we now have the 5 stages. To know that your purpose and your calling are different. Your purpose is the function of your life. Your calling is your assignment, and that will change over time. You have a core purpose. In terms of, but it's not about what you do. It's about who you are. It's about the impact your life has. And so that's the purpose map. It's at the heart of the book. And I share stories throughout. Also, how do you know what stage you're in? How do you shift? Most people are in the shift. And for those who are, feeling and knowing that there's a new season ahead and it's time for them to lead in a new way, maybe you're feeling that tug. That it's time for me to do something greater, maybe use my voice, use what I've been through, turn my story into strategy or my mess into a mission. You're in the right season, but I do believe it is, you'll waste time, perhaps decades. And I do believe it is impossible to fully maximize your life without understanding how your life is designed, how you're wired. And we don't teach purpose. We talk about it, but we don't teach it. And so what I've done is I've tried to provide a framework, training, take all the things that I've learned in terms of how to help people be successful in business, to help people to be knowledgeable and to have true understanding of purpose. Again, to understand means to stand under. And you want to stand under the truth of your divine design, your wiring. You want to stand under what your specific gifts are, what your specific voice is, how you're wired. And then you want to invest in that. You want to build around that. But most of us build randomly and aimlessly just because we don't know. We just don't know. And I think it's time for both those in pulpits and those in the business world, those in positions of leadership, for us just to come and sit in a classroom and say, let's learn about ourselves.
Right.
This is how we fix a lot of the problems we have in society today. And this is how we change real lives, is anchoring it in the truth of who we are, which is our purpose.
Wow. I tell you, Marshawn, I feel like I've just been to church. I feel like I need to put something in the offering plate. You can do that. You can do that. It's just called investing in copies of the book. Well, I already have the book, and I will. But everybody that's listening, go to church. Put that money in that Amazon plate or buy it from directly Marshawn's website. You seriously though, this is why I wanted you on the show, because all these principles that you've outlined and Believe Bigger are so critical when it comes to, especially for, my mission in this audience, when it comes to mid-career professionals, because many of us, and I'm sure you know this, many of us are stuck in between professionally where they want to be. They're not happy in their 9-to-5, or they're trying to launch a business, or they feel they're too old or not digitally savvy enough, or they do have a great digital acumen, but they don't know, to your point, their purpose. And they're stuck, especially mid-career Gen Xers. And so really understanding these 5 stages of divine reinvention, I truly feel is a great action plan, a roadmap called the Purpose Map, that really is almost uniquely designed, especially for Gen Xers, because again, we are kind of that stuck generation. Many of us are successful. Many of us are almost successful or trying to figure it out. But to your point, if you can really understand what your where is and not your why, which again, is another valuable nugget that I took away from, because you do see those two terms interchangeable, purpose and why. And I understand why that is the case, but then the way you've outlined and articulated, it's a fresh approach. I think is very valuable to not just, why you do what you do, but you'll understand that after you have defined what you want to create and where do you want to lead, which is great. Like I have two kids. I have a 9-year-old son and I have a almost 3-year-old daughter. And when I think about and imagining right now my conversations with them about, instead of what do you want to be when you grow up? And I ask Cameron sometimes that now, who's my 9-year-old, and he wants to be the next Steph Curry, which is an obvious answer at his age. But I do have those conversations about creation. He sees his dad as an entrepreneur, and then when I now go to him and talk more about what do you want to create, where do you want to lead, and continue those conversations that
Yes.
I so in my heart of hearts, I do see him blossoming. I see my daughter blossoming. I see this audience, Gen Xers, blossoming, because to your point, another thing that I like to preach with my mission is that, and I'm so glad you doubled and tripled down on it, is that retirement totally means something different now than it did 5 or 20 or 10 years ago, or even 3 years ago. And I don't believe in retirement, and I haven't used reinvention, but I'll use it now, because I truly believe that we should not be crafted and taught there's an end game. There's
Moses did this thing for a minute. Like,
right.
He didn't stop. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't have rest. It doesn't mean it's not time. But I think we are missing out on some of the richest areas of wisdom in those who have worked, who are retired, but because we've taught that's the end, we're now missing out on that wisdom. And this is why we have pandemonium and chaos with a generation that doesn't know who they are, because it's not being passed down, and we're not appreciating. It's almost like we don't even want to get to that stage of life because it's not celebrated.
Right.
And so there's a generation that, might feel, well, I don't have the business savvy, or I don't have the digital acumen, as you were saying. And it's scary. A lot of people that I work with are in that stage. I work with a mature person, because to invest 10 to 50K to work with me in my programs isn't for the flighty.
Yeah.
It's for the flighty person, right?
I do believe so.
A lot of times, though, there are women and men who are saying, I know I'm good at what I do, but it is intimidating to step into this digital landscape that's moving so fast, that's so young. And the truth is, there needs to just be a merging of the two. But when you understand, again, that the more experience you have, the more value you have to create even more value in your life and for other people. And the reason is, again, we're not taught reinvention. So it makes a difference across all generations for the young to appreciate the wise, and also for the wise to not rest in their wisdom, but to use it.
Wow, I love that. The wise, and I love that double entendre too. The wise to invest in their wisdom, to use it. I love that. So I can talk to you for like 20 hours, but I have a final question that I ask all of my guests, Marshawn Evans Daniels, and I'm going to ask you the same question, and I think you'll really enjoy it, being a brand goddess as you are. So this question, Marshawn, if there was a song that would play every time you enter a room or when you walk down the street that perfectly matches your story and the brand of Marshawn Evans Daniels, what song would that be? Basically, what would be your own personal theme song?
Oh my goodness. So there's like 4 that just rush through my head. I have a Believe Bigger music playlist. So the first one that came to mind was the good old song, money, 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 money. Oh, I always like that actually when I come on stage. There's another one that, let's see, Ron Isley created. A lot of people don't know it. It's called Put Your Money on Me. And it talks about if the game's on the line, put the ball in my hands, basically. I'm the one you want to put your money on. And so I love that song. And then there's a song by Katy Perry, actually, that's called Roar.
Okay.
And I've got the eye of the tiger, and
yeah, I know that.
You're going to hear me roar. And so there are so many others, but I believe that where the Bible says, I pray that you would prosper even as your soul would prosper. Mm-hmm. When I look at money, I believe that money is man-made. Prosperity is God-given. So I have a different understanding when I say, put your money on me. Mm-hmm. I'm just saying, put your trust, put your bet. And if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it, because I'm always a good investment. I'm going to always be a good return, because God lives inside of me. And you're going to see not just what I do, you're going to see what God does when you put your money on me. Mm-hmm. I'm good ground. And this is the conversation I have with myself when I'm listening to this song, when I'm in the gym, mm-hmm. putting up weight on the treadmill and walking around my neighborhood, getting inspiration before I'm going to go out and do a talk or put together a training. This is the music that I listen to, because nobody else is going to tell me what I have to first believe for myself. It should be a confirmation or a rejection, mm-hmm. someone else's opinion. But I believe that, so I like that one. I'll go with that one the most. Put your money on me.
Put your money. All three were good. I love For the Love of Money, and I'm a big OJ's fan, and Roar. But Put Your Money on Me by Mr. Biggs, Mr. Ron. So only Gen Xers will get that probably. Yeah, Put Your Money on Me, Mr. Ron Isley. I love it. See, and that was very bold of you, and I appreciate that. You literally just took it head on and embrace this money, like head on. You didn't shy away from it. You picked two songs with the word money in the title, and but you explained so eloquently the reason why, and I love that. Marshawn, this has been a blessing, not only to me, but I'm sure to the Gen X Amplified community, and for those who haven't listened to the podcast yet, that will, and all of those who have been blessed by your book. You dropped a lot of great nuggets, a lot of actionable insights and points. And I advise all of you who are listening, please grab your copy of this book. It is awesome. Listen to the audiobook. I'm sure it's out as well, right?
Yes. You can get Believe Bigger at believebigger.com. Mm-hmm. Everywhere books are sold. Barnes & Noble, Books A Million. It's on Amazon. The ebook is available, meaning the digital for your ebook reader. Mm-hmm. Also, the audiobook is performing extremely well.
Great.
I narrate it, and people say, I love hearing your voice. And I've been a student of voice and teaching communication for a long time. And so I want people to feel like they're in a multi-$1,000 seminar one-on-one with me as they listen to the audio. But most who get the audio want the physical book as well. Faith come by hearing, but doing come by seeing. So you need to see this purpose map, and you need to see the potential pyramid, and you need to see the chart separating your gifts and your talents, and see what these 5 mountains look like. And so I encourage you to get both the digital, but to operate in a physical world, you need the physical as well. And you can get that at believebigger.com, and I have some great bonuses available for you there too. That'll be up for a limited time.
Awesome. Everyone, did you hear that? Please pick it up. Check out those bonuses. And again, Marshawn, it has been a blessing to me. Thank you so much for spending time with me. A lot of nuggets. I truly, Marshawn, really, and you mentioned him earlier, you have the 5 love languages in Gary Chapman, but I strongly believe that the 5 steps to divine reinvention would be literally right up there as far as a guide that will live forever and will help change many lives and move people from that comfort zone to their glory zone. Thank you so much for spending time with me and the Gen X Amplified community, Marshawn.
Thank you for having me. Enjoyed this conversation.
Thank you. So that was Marshawn Evans Daniels, author of Believe Bigger, Discover the Path to Your Life Purpose. Always, thank you so much for listening to this episode. To find out more and to get the show notes, go over to genxamplified.com, where you can catch up and hear all of the other episodes, including this great one right here, my conversation with Marshawn Evans Daniels. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the show through the Apple Podcast app, the Google Podcast app, or again, wherever you get your podcast, based on what type of device you have. We're also on Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, basically all over. And if you're over there on iTunes or the Apple Podcast app, please give us a rating and review if you really enjoyed this content. And you can also check me out at adrianporter.com to stay in touch with me, get on my email list to see when episodes are becoming available and get other additional content, and just read more about my mission, which is helping and empowering Gen Xers, Gen X professionals, mid-career professionals to maximize our impact at work, in business, and in life. So once again, I'm Adrian Porter, and you've been listening to Gen X Amplified. Remember, it's more than a podcast. It's a movement.